What's up, everyone? Welcome to Conversations with Joshua T. Berglan, and I am blessed and honored to get to know, while introducing you to Micah Yacht. Micah, how you doing, man? Welcome to Conversations with Joshua T. Berglan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
We started talking a little bit ago, and you have some really cool stuff going on that I've gotten to see behind the scenes of a little bit. But we were just talking about this really cool logo in the back. Will you care to explain it? Because it is super cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. So I made this logo for my website. It's a wellness center essentially focusing on education and connection. It stands for ARC, All Range Combat. So the idea that we can combat trauma inside of us, and then we can combat every range beyond ourselves. So it would then extend to hand-to-hand combat, and then gun, so on and so forth.
Now, what inspired that?
This has been a goal of mine to reform the education system, public education, and try to create a facility that combines education and healing. So I kind of feel like our education system is lacking, our public education system. So I've designed a kind of a guide that I've been working on to kind of break the day up. So it's a little bit more spaced out and more focused on connection rather than just sitting there and listening. It's more interactive. And I feel like if I can get it up and running, it will help change and reform the education system that we have.
Why? Okay, I want to preface this because I'm around a lot of educators that are doing a lot of things for education. And there's a similar theme with every one of them that I know, my partner Jessica included. So I know their reasoning why behind it. What's your reason? Like, why do you care? Do you have children?
I do. I have a 6-year-old daughter.
Okay. So is that part of your why, or why do you care so much? Because I can tell the audience from what I know that this is not a surface level thing for you. This is not only have you been preparing and covering all of your bases and being methodical and going into detail and taking your time with it, because on the appearance, from what I can tell, you really care. But answer the question, why do you really care?
And that's a very good question. Why do something like this?
Yeah.
So since I was a child, I was in public education, very small school. And you do benefit from having a smaller classroom. So I got the benefit of having such a small class. But at the same time, it's standardized education. So it doesn't really fit everybody. Specifically, my experience, I was always very, very quiet. I was a timid, quiet kid. So I would just sit in the back, not really get any attention because I wouldn't raise my hand or speak up. So I learned how to educate myself just through observation and note taking. So I managed to get through school, but it was I was so disengaged. It wasn't really fulfilling for me at all. I would just go the bare minimum so that I could at least get through it. I would do the bare minimum classwork just to get through the classes. And I was so focused more on art because it was more fulfilling for me to create something rather than just sit and listen to somebody speak about something and have me regurgitate the information. But I feel like if I can at least create a seed of change in the education system, even if I'm not responsible for it, at least I start the idea and plant it into our ecosystem essentially. Maybe we can reform it and make it more interactive for people like myself who learn with hands-on rather than sitting and just regurgitating.
Well, I'm with you there. Have you ever read the book Code of the Extraordinary Mind?
No,
I think you would like it.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, I think you would like it because the very first time I ever heard or read someone talk about the education system and what it really is and what it should or could be, it lit me up inside. It changed my whole worldview. It made me understand that I wasn't crazy, but that I learned different. One, I learned different, and two, the dreams and the visions inside of me were real. Like I wasn't crazy or hallucinating or making things up. Like imagination is actually something that's good, and we get to use it to create things, and that set off my creative everything. It set me free because I didn't know until that point. I didn't know I was an artist. Didn't know. I I was good at carving on desk, and I did crazy things with art and expressed art in different ways, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. But I didn't realize this vivid imagination was wanting to paint, and not literally paint, but you know what I mean, express itself and get that out. That book is what changed everything for me. And that started, I read that book when I was homeless, and that is what shifted for me, everything. So I love this track that you're on. I'd also like to know, because I know some of your creative projects, you are an artist. You're also media savvy. Like you know the different media channels to be able to use. I don't know this for fact, but I'm going to guess, and I'd love for you to correct me. It seems like to me that you discovered this on your journey yourself. It wasn't like you grew up going, "Hey, I want to know media," or "I want to learn media." Like it almost seems like, at least what I can tell, the way you've put things together, that you discovered this on your journey and understood that it was the vehicle to get this message that you have out. How far off am I?
No, you're right. You're
Am I?
accurate.
Wow, that was a good guess. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I have
So
a
go ahead.
coping mechanism of hyper independence from childhood, probably from a wound. So essentially, it caused me to just go out and discover everything on my own as much as possible. Because I have a tendency to not ask for help. It's kind of a weakness of mine.
Same. I can relate to that 100%. So, okay, now I want to ask you that. Why? Why why are you afraid to ask for help?
That is the question, why? And I always relate it back to a childhood wound of neglect and rejection. Um, and I think also part of programming for the masculine mind in our society that if you ask for help, you are a weak man because you can't do it on your own. And it's that very old way of thinking that we have to get away from. And I've been working on it myself, reflecting quietly, meditating, trying to get to the source. And I've been putting in as much effort as in my capacity to reach out and connect with people that I don't know, which is very difficult for me because I live in a cave.
So I'm gonna you saying that reminds me of our first interactions when we had trouble with getting on Zoom to talk for the first time. And I was so frustrated, but I didn't know if it was me or you that I was frustrated with, because I couldn't figure it out. I like something was off. Couldn't tell if you were playing games with me. I didn't know what was going on. But as I've gotten to know you, because we figured it out. We finally got on a call. We finally got to talk, and then I was just like blown away with you and all that you're about. But you operate on a different level than most people. Like you truly are in your own world. So I'm assuming here, and I'm not, and that's not a knock, because I'm the same way. That's why I want to say this. I would assume that it's very lonely for you even being around other people. Is that true?
Yes, unfortunately.
So I have the same thing. I could be in a crowd. I could be around 1,000 people and feel completely alone. Feel
Yeah.
like I do not resonate or identify or align or have anything in common with any of the people that I'm around. Could that be something I'm making up in my head? Oh, very, 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 very possible. But doesn't change the fact how lonely it is. It doesn't change the fact that every time I try to develop a friendship, somehow it goes south. And if I typically think it has something to do with me every time.
Yeah.
I have first introductions with people where I hit it off and they're like, "You're my boy," male or female, it doesn't matter. "You're my boy. We're gonna be buddies for life." And then maybe 2 or 3 conversations later, never hear from again. And I like, okay, is this me? Like, what's going on? Is this God removing this person from my life? Am I
Yeah.
toxic? Is there something wrong with me? And then, I mean, there's a lot of different examples like that. So, like, how do you get through it? Because I don't do a good job getting through it most of the time. I really struggle. And I'm blessed to have a partner that kind of helps me navigate these things. But how do you deal with it?
That is a great question. Because it breaks my heart every time.
Oh,
Because I put 100% of my love into every connection that I make, only because I feel like if I don't, I'm holding myself back and I'm not giving the opportunity for that connection to actually flourish. And I don't want to be responsible for the reason why a connection fails, even if my honesty does cause it to fail, because I am going to be authentically honest with people. And it acts as a filter. It gets rid of people that can't handle who I am, which is okay. And part of me it breaks my heart because I want to have that connection. I want to be connected to people. So after so many times of having your heart broken, you learn how to recover more quickly. Uh, at least I have, and I have to say, it is a process of grief. Um, it's like anytime you do go through a relationship and it falls apart, you're going to cry. You're going to feel like it was your fault. Uh, you're going to feel like you're a failure and that you can't seem to connect with anybody. And then once you get past that pity, that self pity, you'll come right back and you'll be like, well, it just wasn't meant to be. Because we have no control over anything. Life is happening for us. So when somebody leaves our life, it was for the best.
So what, okay, so I relate to that, but then the thought came to me, so them leaving, that was what's best for them too.
Yeah.
So it's not so much that they're bad and I'm good or vice versa. It's just that this is not for you, either one of you.
Yeah.
Is that really the appropriate way to look at it?
Yeah. I feel like we are all on a very specific frequency, like a song. And some songs harmonize with each other. And you
Hmm.
could see that with overlapping certain songs, they sync up almost perfectly. Um, and that could just because of, harmonies or syncopation. But I feel like humans are the same way. We're just a cluster of melodies. And sometimes the frequencies, they harmonize so well and they just stay together. That's how I feel. And then they don't. So they have to separate because it's causing dissonance and it's causing so much conflict that they have to separate to get back to that pure song that they are.
I like that. That's pretty. So what is your feeling about trauma bonding then?
Whew, that's interesting because it's like when when I was reflecting on my own trauma bonding, why would I feel like I need this chaos in my life to give me that identity, or at least purpose, because that's all I ever knew.
Hmm.
That was the comfort zone. And I feel like when we don't address the trauma that we have inside of us and we look at it like, well, that's just who I am, we identify with the trauma instead of doing the work and focusing on healing. It's almost like we are settling for a version of ourselves that is less than what we could be. And when we find somebody to reinforce that, almost like reassure us that we're making the right choice, it allows us to cope with our decision, even though we know subconsciously that it's not healthy.
Mhm.
It's not making us feel good. It's not making our life better. Yet we still do it. And then we go, are we just crazy and broken? It's like, no, we're being lazy.
That's not the answer. That's not what I thought you were about to say at all. Not even close. Trauma bonding's like a drug.
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing because I'm all about high vibing people. I love big energy, love it, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Not to use a douchey whatever those things are called. Anyway, but high vibe is great. You want to be around high vibing people, blah blah blah. But there's something almost drug like about trauma bonding. It's a line of cocaine, shot of meth, whatever it may be. And I'm using those examples because the consequences of it are about like meth and cocaine. It's a train wreck, soul killer. It's just waiting to happen every time. But yet it feels so good and important and needed, but it's not. I know do you have any explanation for why that is? Or is this just my experience with it?
No, I think you're absolutely correct. It is like a drug because it's reinforcing that feeling like you are living the in the right way. It's like everything you've experienced in the past is recycling now in the present as an adult in a more complex way to reinforce everything you experienced to say, yes, that experience was accurate and it was good. So now we're doing it in a much more complex way as an adult. And it's like, yes, this is correct. Keep doing this. It makes you feel good to feel that high, and it makes you feel good to feel that terrible low and that pain. And then you identify with both ends of the spectrum, that pain body and that high. It creates that duality for the ego to
Mm.
exist. And the ego needs both. It needs that reassurance and it needs that pain in order for it to exist. If you get rid of both and you live completely at peace in the present, there's no room for the ego. It's just what is.
Wow. Okay, so I want to know because it's pretty apparent that you've been on your own healing journey. Where did you learn all of this? Because it feels like you've really mastered your trauma experience.
It has been an ongoing education that I pick up through observation, and I am drawn to certain individuals, the way they speak, the way they articulate things. The two that pop up in my head from that question is Eckhart Tolle and Jordan Peterson. These two minds have really resonated with me. The way that they approach life and our human experience, especially relationships, and how if we don't address our own control over our ego, or control might be the wrong word, acceptance of our ego, then it almost causes us to be disabled and incapable of having real relationships.
Yeah, I align with that. I like Jordan Peterson too, and Eckhart Tolle. I've tried to read some of his books. He's a little smarter than I am. The way he writes, my brain doesn't comprehend so well. But every once in a while, like I'll pick up on something he's trying to say, and he's an interesting guy,
Mm.
for sure. I feel like I'm in a phase of unlearning because
Mm.
I've awoken to the fact that most of what I've learned was absolute bullshit.
I agree. Same here.
And as somebody that spent a lot of time trying to educate himself on every possible issue that I was told was important or I believed was important to myself at the time, only to find out that no, that's really not that's not relevant to your life. It's been quite the journey. I did all this work to heal, only to get to this place of healing to realize that I needed to unlearn everything because I had just put myself into a different type of box. So it was before it was a trauma box, an addiction box, an escape box. But then I got into a self-righteous box that
Mm.
religion took me towards. And then when I chose to walk away because I realized what was going on there and I found freedom. And then when I found freedom, I was like a little wobbly deer, a newborn deer trying to like get its footing on ice, like whatever that cartoon was. I don't remember. I didn't watch cartoons as a kid, really. So I'm thinking of is it Bambi? Bambi
I
on the
think
ice.
so.
Anyway, but that's what it was like for me. And then I just kept hitting wall after wall after wall, trying to find truth. And then got to a place of, well, I'm not going to know these absolute truths just yet. So now I've come to this place of unlearning. And that's as weird of a feeling as that is. I feel like for the first time in my life, I have peace because I don't feel like I need to know anything. I don't feel like I need to be the smartest guy in the room. I kind of enjoy being around other smart, interesting people. And I may not necessarily agree with what they're saying, but I find it interesting. And like, I'm cool with it. Like, I don't care if Nephilim is a thing or Donald Trump's really the Antichrist or, we're all going to turn into robots. Like, I, I used to care about all of that. Now I don't really care. I just want to like live my life and enjoy it and like and get out of my own way. But it took 7 years, 7 years to get to that place of unraveling all the stuff before. Where was the point for you where you realized that, okay, well, I've been trying to learn all this stuff to become the man that I was created to be, or the person I was created to be. Well, now I got to unlearn all that. Like, what was
Mm.
your process?
Well, that is actually it in a nutshell. Is like untangling and unlearning just so we can get back to our core, our authentic self. It's got all these layers of societal programming and cultural programming, and it's all this nonsense that they just convolute everything intentionally just to mess you up as an individual. And it's easier to control you now. So for me, I started at the same concept. I saw the problem ahead of time about 10 years ago. I saw it started happening. I knew just through pattern recognition that we're heading in a really chaotic state in our environment. So what's the solution there? Well, we got to become self-reliant. How do you become self-reliant? You go live out in the woods and you start creating a homestead that survives off grid, or self-sustaining. How do you do that? Well, you got to get into farming, and you got to get into livestock, and you got to build. So you got to be a pretty efficient builder. I started carpentry then. I already had some knowledge of farming growing up. So I basically just started my path, which I knew was going to take years to build, an off-grid homestead. So I designed a home that would sustain off-grid, recycle everything, kind of like a land ship, I think they call it. And I just started that journey about 10 years ago, a little less, with my currently my ex-wife. And our goal was to create a little safe haven from this chaos. Halfway through, I started to learn that there is no escaping it because it's not it's not outside of us. It's inside of us. So you can't build your way out of it. You have to heal your way out of it. And I only discovered this past winter, last winter, when I learned that my wife at the time was being unfaithful to me. So I had to make a decision whether to continue the relationship and try to heal from it or separate entirely. And I tried for some time to forgive and move on. Unfortunately, I am not capable of doing such a thing, unfortunately. So I had to separate. And it was at such a low point for me that my self-worth was completely gone. And I think that was the turning point for me. That's what sparked all of this change in my mindset, my perspective, or my perception.
How do you don't seem like the cheating type? It didn't seem like your character or anything what you're about. Even when you were in your healing phase. I mean, we're all always healing, but I mean, like before you turned it around and you got on this healing journey, you don't seem the type. And I could be wrong, could be making an absolutely ridiculous assumption, but I just don't feel that about you. I was a cheater. But at the same time, being cheated on was the worst feeling in the world. And it was probably an ego shot. Like it was a shot to my ego and pride and everything else. But it was devastating. And I couldn't deal with it mentally. It was making me insane. And the only way I knew how to deal with it was to turn it into a fantasy. The same way I had done with being molested, with everything. Like I twisted, flipped the reality of the situation or my perception of it. I flipped it, turned it into a fantasy years ago, which created its own kind of monster. That's it. So, as someone who is not a cheater, you don't have those type of issues. For you, what was the first thought that went through your head when you found out that you were cheated on by your wife?
Mhm. That's a tough one. It was, I was responsible somehow, and I was a failure as a husband and father, and I didn't deserve to live.
Holy jeez.
Yeah, that was the self-worth that I was talking about. It was, I I never committed to marriage until after about 5.5 years of dating my wife. Um, and that was only because I didn't want to falsely get married to somebody. I wanted to really know a person. And I foolishly thought that I could help, I guess, mitigate my own trauma as well as hers, because we were
Mm.
both struggling with childhood trauma. And my ego thought I could handle both of the responsibilities. And then when that happened, I immediately felt like a failure and that I wasted 12 years of my life.
Oh God.
So I felt like ending it. That was just the pressure I put on myself.
Yeah. Did you always desire a monogamous relationship? Did you have that,
Yeah.
married for life? I'm only going to have sex with you and I'm good with this. Is that, yeah, that's, yeah, I would imagine that that's earth shattering.
Yeah.
And I'm asking the questions the way I'm asking because my entire life, up until my relationship with Jessica, everything was very unhealthy. So I have never really asked these questions to anyone before because I've never met anyone in your situation. I've never actually met a guy that would honestly say, and I would believe them, that they wanted monogamy.
Yeah.
I meet a lot of guys that don't want their wife to cheat on them, but they want to have sex with other people.
Yeah.
So,
Which is contradiction.
which is a huge contradiction.
Yeah.
It's a scary contradiction in my view. But I've met a lot of people that way, and you know what? Being in all honesty, which I've kind of alluded to it, but I was that way too. Like I cheated because I didn't know my identity. I was struggling. I had a lot of trauma and wounds and that, and I just didn't have the self discipline or self control or anything else to be monogamous and not a cheater. In fact, I didn't even have the strength to be patient for the woman that I really wanted, the woman that I really desired. But if two of the five boxes were checked and she would put up with my BS, then that was good enough. That was my approach to relationships. That's how damaged I was. But now being in a healthy relationship, it's totally different. Like I see it through the lens that you do. I see the spiritual connection in that like a true connection where like without it, how it almost feels empty and almost like death.
Yeah.
And so like even though I could never give my virginity to Jessica because I was long gone starting the age of 7, well, I can't do that. I see why people would want it now. And it took 44 years of my life to get there. So my heart goes out to you in every bit of a way that it could possibly understand. But even though I don't necessarily relate or to understanding how you feel, I can totally see why it would be devastating. Let me ask you this. We're watching the show. I can't remember the name of it, but it's about a kid that's autistic, has ASD, and it's navigating their family. And one of the episodes, the wife cheated, had it started an affair on the husband, and that dynamic is playing out now. So you brought up your child. What has that been like navigating the relationship as co-parents and having a child with what happened in the relationship?
Yeah. So another part of the pressure that I put on myself is to provide a life that is much better than the one I was given as a child. So I do everything in my power to only say positive things about her mother and separate her from any type of conflict that we ever experienced. It hasn't been easy But when we were together and she was 2, starting to really comprehend the chaos that was around her. It would break my heart. So I had to protect her from that.
You I hope that I didn't reopen something for you. Wasn't my intention, but I felt led to ask those questions because I just felt led to. I don't really have a reason. But I remember growing up, I guess I know why I've asked the questions. I grew up in a home where one of my earliest memories went to the office with my dad one night. I was with my little brother, and the secretary's kids were there. And we were told to go to this room and play. And I'll never forget, like, obviously we're like, well, why are we here? And like, what are they doing? And just being a nosy kid and seeing my dad cheat or hearing my dad cheat. I couldn't see it. I heard it for the first time. And I have example after example of, my father cheating and being around it and seeing it and those stories. And it did a lot of damage to my brother and I, because of the things that we saw, the things that we witnessed. And then to make it worse, when my mom finally got the courage to leave, and very proud of her for doing so, but my father took things to a different level with then trying to shame my mom after all that he had done. It's hell on children. And, I don't know why when I was a cheater, I didn't think of those things. And it took me a while to wake up and go, wow, I spent my whole life hating my dad, and only to realize that I've become exactly like my dad. But not even, no, not exactly like, I became worse. Like everything I hated, I became.
Mhm.
So this, you handling things like this with your daughter the way you have, I just have a ton of respect for you,
Thank you.
because that is not an easy situation to navigate. And the way that you've handled it, you're probably saving her a lot of therapy bills. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for you for this. How let me ask you this. Have you noticed that it's been harder, or I don't know if you're dating now, but have you noticed that it's more difficult for you to trust now?
Yeah, I've had this conversation once before with another person about dating after divorce. And part of me wants to try, and I have tried. Unfortunately, I've failed multiple times, even trying, because I realized I'm not really open and I'm not really trusting. And I think that's part of the fact that I wasn't healed yet. I wasn't ready to trust myself to handle rejection or neglect.
Mm.
And I was putting pressure on myself again before I was ready. I'm not dating anybody. Like I said, I tried to connect with some women, but it didn't turn into anything. So I think it's important to try to find that trust in yourself again before spreading some more trauma.
Well, that what you just said is so important, because that, if you have not taken the time to heal and done the work to heal, all that shit just comes with you in the next relationship, and it shows up and reveals itself at the worst times.
Yeah.
And I've done it thinking, when I was in a good place, thinking I could help someone heal, and a lot of people thought they could help me heal, or help me fix me, help love me, and or help me learn to love myself, like all these things, and it was always a disaster. And then that relationship would end and immediately go into another one. So it's just more baggage and more baggage and more baggage and more trauma and more trauma. And then when you factor in kids, then it's a whole other level. And then their families. And I wish, if I had any message, like if I died today, if there was any message that I could leave with younger people, even older people, don't just jump into relationships. Take the time to heal. Do the work. It's worth it. And when you do the work and you heal, you are then in a position to attract the person for you. You don't want a wounded version of the person for you, because that's still not the person for you. And I'm very fortunate, even though it took a long time to get that message through my head, that I did take the time to heal, do the work, be alone, abstain from sex, because that just complicates things too. It can be a beautiful thing, and good sex can make you stupid too, because a lot of people stay in relationships because it's good sex, or they do the freaky shit that the wife wouldn't do, and next thing you know, you're in a 4-year relationship with somebody just because you enjoy the sex, but you hate their guts in every other capacity.
Yeah.
I'm only speaking from experience here. Anyway, it's worth it doing the healing, because I got to tell you, or doing the work to heal, because there is someone for each of us. I believe it with all my heart, because even I was able to get that. And I have HIV. I've been in jail 6 times. I've been a junkie. I've been everything. And then I've been the worst of the worst. And if I can be blessed with the perfect partner and a good family, then anyone can, because I didn't do anything to deserve it. And you're way nicer of a guy than I am. So but I appreciate you sharing all that, because I know it can't be easy. And now your art makes so much more sense to me.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to share with people right now about your project. And I call it a project because I don't have a better word. Yeah, it's going to be a movie. Yeah, a comic book. Yeah, an audiobook. Yeah, a book. Yeah, probably a movie franchise. Yeah, probably action figures and all kinds of things. Like, you have something developing that I've been able to see that is so unique, so cool, such a cross-cultural, multi-faceted, multi-genre. I don't even know if I have the vocabulary to try to explain what you have going on, but it's therapy, it's art, it's movies, it's comic book, it's I'm going to shut up now and I'm going to let you explain it, but I got to tell you, it is very, very cool. And there's so much depth it's almost going to be like a never ending story because it can keep on going and growing. There's multiple layers to it. There's multiple offshoots. There's multiple opportunities for it to go into multiple genres. Could be a talk show, could be a movie, could be a cartoon, could be a comic book, could be a short film, could be a TV series, a series of books. You're just sitting in the middle of something very beautiful.
Thank
So,
you.
would you please share with the audience about your creation?
Yes. I actually just watched The Neverending Story last night, so I think that's funny
Ah!
that you mentioned it.
I
That's
love
one
it.
of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it is great.
So the silent scream is what you're referring to. It started with an idea that we all have a silent scream inside of us that needs to come out. That's what ARC is all about, the wellness center, education center that I'm developing. I want to pull out the silent scream out of everybody, including myself. So that's where it started. And then I decided I wanted to make it a superhero story. I wanted to make a superhero that was the silent scream, that leads people, inspires people to pull out the silent scream inside of them. Now, I didn't want it to be the usual superhero origin story. I wanted it to be something that was personal to me. So the whole story is a reflection of my life, which I'm sure most writers would say the same thing. The idea was combining multiple genres that I'm interested in, which is anime, sci-fi, horror, and psychological thrillers. I love psychological thrillers as well as Easter eggs. I love little hidden things that you can later discover and it makes you feel good because you discovered something. So I combined all of the things that I love into one story. I have put in about 6 months of work on this. I have 3 stories so far. I've only released the first one, so it's still developing uh, the characters and the storyline, but I have pretty much the entire story written, as well as multiple, whatever they call spin-offs,
Yeah.
side stories. I have multiple spin-offs. So it's essentially my goal is to inspire young men and young women because they'll see that it's not just a single superhero, it's multiple. And I want people to embrace the idea that they don't have to hide, they don't have to make themselves small to fit and make everything around them comfortable. Make everyone uncomfortable and be as big as you want. That's really the idea behind it. Disrupt everything because this is a sick system and we need to break it.
I as just perfectly said. I'm a fan, man. I'm glad that I brought up the first time we tried to communicate, and I'm glad that that wasn't the actual reality and that we actually got to connect because I think that, well, one, you're an incredible human being,
Thank
and
you.
and you're and you just trigger my curiosity. Like, I know there's just so much more, and I could just sit here and keep asking you questions and questions and questions and digging and digging and digging because there's just so much depth to your brain, where you're coming from, your perspective, what you've witnessed, how you've healed, what you've experienced, how you feel. Like, all of those things are fascinating to me. And yet understanding that it's very complex. And it's no freaking wonder you feel alone, because I don't think you could feel the way you feel if you were surrounded by people all the time. And yet it's these things that you feel and that you imagine and you see that are enabling you to create such masterful work. And it is masterful. I really believe that this your project that you have and what you're creating and put together, this ecosystem of well, it's a creative genius, yes, but it's masterful in the sense of how it intertwines and hits all of the necessary areas that matter to the world that we live in today, but the world that we're going into. And I think I could be wrong about this. I don't believe I am, but I think that when we come into this new world, that you're going to be seen as one of the people that helped build it with your art. And I'm really rooting for you. Like, I really am. Please tell the audience what you're looking for to really take this project to the next level. Because again, it's kind of like you people talk about the what's that superhero? I don't really watch movies, but um the Marvel universe or whatever it's called. You know, it's got all of these different things going on, and there's theme parks and amusement parks and apparel and movies, and like you've got your own version of that. But to me, it's for something good, and that will help people heal and help people grow and encourage people to express themselves through art. So please tell the audience like what kind of support you need to be able to make this happen, whether it's financial, a team, like just lay it all out there, because you never know who's watching. And I can tell the audience that I've seen behind the scenes of what he has, and I wouldn't be talking like this if it wasn't epic. It is epic, it's special, it's new, and there's frankly very little out there that's new, because everything is at this point has been recycled, it's been done before. What he's got has not been done that I've seen. So will you please share with what you need to be able to make this happen?
I think you hit the nail on the head with I am a struggling artist, so I have no financial support whatsoever. I need a team of artists, whether it's one or two, doesn't matter. Someone besides myself to help push this. I am building it by myself, so it's slow, especially with no money.
Relate.
I am trying to connect with as many people as possible to find somebody interested in this project. I've met you, and I'm very, very thankful for meeting you because, like I said, I've been alone on this, and I've been developing this for 9 months, and I want somebody to believe in it besides me. I have a list of production companies that I'm going to try to make a relationship with. I've found artists that I think are brilliant. Unfortunately, you can't put the cart before the horse. And besides myself animating it every page, that's pretty much where I'm at. I can't do anything beyond that. So I've been trying to do commercial work for graphic design, video editing. I've tried creating books. I give away my trauma transmutation book for free because I feel like that's more important, just to get out there to people. But I'm working on a small lesson plan of how to recreate what I did, so that people can simply follow the steps and do it themselves. Um, So I'm trying to create anything that will generate income, but I have no income.
Yeah, that's a lot of artists. And I've been there. I know. I mean, and it's only been recently that it's turned around and have momentum going. But it's not easy because I think most artists would agree to this statement. One of the few times that an artist feels alive is when they are creating,
Yes.
because that's what they're created to do, is create. And it's tough because as artists we don't think about the business side of things.
Yeah.
Why I'm very fortunate that as I figured out I was an artist, I was also kind of thrown into situations where I was learning things that ended up being, I was learning media, through first sponsoring events, then falling into production through producing events. Producing events got me on set, which got me my first acting job, which then led to producing movies. But I collectively, through volunteering and serving, I learned these skills and how to do things. And then my creative mind was able to put it together and go, oh, that's what all this is. Oh, well, this is what I need to do then. And was able to figure it out. But even then, trying to build something, my media systems, and do it with no money, like, well, how am I supposed to do that? And I'm competing with people that have money. They have the money to pay the robots or a staff to help them do things for them. And and it's just like, well, what do I do? Like, how am I supposed to do this? And I understand what you're talking about, and it's frustrating. Because even once you get your platform built, like in my case, I needed to build the platform where it would do the selling for me of services and other things, where then my only job was to create. So now, well, I don't have to necessarily rely on, and I have sponsors for my show and things like that, but I don't have to rely on that. This is one example of what I get to create. But by creating, then it promotes the other things that I do. That for me is a dream, because the thought of becoming a salesperson or getting a sales job or having to be on the phone calling people going, hey, and trying to enroll them into some system that I don't really even want to do, that sounds like death to me.
Mm.
If you need me, I want to be there to help. If I want to provide a service. And anyway, my point is this, is like artists don't really learn business, and like the world that we're in doesn't really cater to artists. Artists are only appreciated after they're dead, they go crazy and kill someone, or someone buys their art. Like that. Other than that, they're a starving artist.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, that's the thing that they're here to do, is to create. So it's a weird dynamic. But the most encouraging thing that I can think of is that the world that we're going into is for artists. And I believe that you're going to be one of those people that helps bring us into that new world and helps create that world that we want to live in. And it's because of the art that you create. So I pray that anyone out there that's listening or watching that has the funds, that's looking to invest in a cool project that is going to have an impact on the world, I just ask that you reach out to Micah, and sign an NDA. Look at what he has got going on, because it's special. To me, it's something that would give you a return. You would make your money back and then some. But more importantly, it's a project that you can feel good about, that covers multiple levels, that fits into multiple age groups. It's not just for kids. It's not just for adults. It's not just for people that have gone through trauma. It's for anyone. It is special, special, special. So, Micah, please tell people where they can follow you, where they can support your journey, and where they can learn more about what you're doing.
Well, I do a lot of posting on Facebook. I post a lot on TikTok, on Instagram. I'm not really on much else. I do a little bit of LinkedIn, but I do have a link tree that I try to keep updated of all of my work. I'm right now. I'm currently making a short film for TikTok. I've broken it up into tiny sections, so it's not all at once. I'm going to finish that on Halloween. It's a short horror film that I'm creating just for entertainment. And yeah, I'm hoping to connect with anybody that's willing to either work with me or just simply be an angel, which we need angels.
We all need the angels. I do. Do you have a website?
I have an ARC website that it's a prototype. It's doesn't it's listed as GoDaddy sites, whatever, ARC Wellness Center. But the actual official website, once I have the finances to produce it, is thesilent which is how I tied it into the graphic novel movie.
May I give you some advice real quick?
Absolutely.
Before you buy The Silent Scream, buy your name.
Mm.
.com.
Okay.
I talked to you for an hour of why that's important. I won't. Just hope that you trust me on this. That would be the first website I buy.
Okay.
Just saying. You're going to need it. Because Silent Scream is one project of many that you're going to create that you've already, I mean, you created multiple already. But your name is going to be the most important domain that you own, especially for the talent that you are. Because all that you've learned how to do so far, and again, I've seen a lot of it, and the thing that you have that's hurting you is that it's not at one central location. It's all of everywhere, piece by piece, and a lot of artists go through this. And because that's what we're kind of taught to do. Get your Facebook account, get your Twitter account, get your YouTube, get this, get that. You don't own any of those. And if you sell any of your stuff on any of those platforms, you're not getting to keep all your money. I mean, that could be, it depends on what you've created on that platform. But the point is this, the energy that it takes to promote all of those different platforms could be channeled into promoting one platform that has all your stuff. Why would you promote something you don't own?
Right.
And you are so talented. And the people that you may lose some traffic and eyeballs because you're not in an algorithm that's, pushing your content to be seen by certain people that certain hashtags are sending them to. But the same energy that you put into promoting all of these other platforms, you could put into promoting yours. And one person coming to your website is better than 200 people seeing your stuff on social scrolling. Because if they come to your website, they're there intentionally. It's different. So again, I know you're an artist. There's things going on. There's steps to things, but I want to encourage you to buy your domain before you buy anything else, because then you can just be the work in progress with all of your creations, but everything is centralized. And people will know Micah Yacht. People are going to know you. You do great work. Well, brother, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the man that you are. Thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing some very hard things. I commend you. Tons of respect for you. And I look forward to connecting again.
Thank you. I do too. Thank you for having me.
See you, brother.
See you.